Hey mama, are you tired of feeling stressed and overwhelmed trying to grow your online business with your babies at home? You desire more flexibility in your day, allowing you to pour into your family, yourself, and your business without running yourself into the ground. Mama, you can build your dream business and do it in a way that fits your current season of life. And I'm going to show you exactly how. Welcome to the Mama Turned Mompreneur podcast. I'm your host, Andria Singletary, daughter of the king, wife, mama of two, and life and business coach for mompreneurs. On this podcast, you will learn business strategies made for mamas just like you, who desire to be successful CEOs and fully present mamas without stress or overwhelm. So whether you're an entrepreneur who transitioned to a mompreneur or a mama turned mompreneur, I am here to support you. So grab your coffee, notebook, and pen, put in those earbuds, and let's dig in. Hey, mama. So today we are diving into podcast pitching. So really looking at if you've pitched yourself to, be on podcast and it was crickets, the things that you need to avoid doing when submitting your podcast guest application, when pitching yourself to guest on podcasts. And we're talking about this because I see this come up a lot for people where they say, they've pitched themselves to be on podcasts, but they don't get a response. Or even just thinking about a lot of the pitches that I receive for the Mama Turned Mompreneur podcast, and most of them, they get denied because they're making one or all of these mistakes. So we're going to dive into that today. But before we do, as a reminder, the doors to the Social Media Detox Club is open. If you didn't listen to last week's episodes, then you missed the announcement. I launched a new membership called the Social Media Detox Club. And this is for the mamas who are ready to consistently get visible, get their name out there, get their business out there, create that offer awareness, build their authority, but doing it in a way that one is sustainable and two does not rely on social media. So inside of this club, we are not doing anything social media related. So inside of the membership, we are getting visible through podcast guesting, speaking engagements, bundle collaborations, as well as other types of collaborations like guest blogging and leveraging PR. So getting, article features and different things like that. That is what we're doing inside of the membership. And these are low effort, low energy strategies that make sense, that work and fit your current season of life, but they yield such a high return. So that is what we're doing inside of the membership. And so you get the community aspect. You get to connect with other mamas who are doing amazing things like you that you can even collaborate with if it makes sense. But also, I am finding the collaboration opportunities for you. And I really get to learn your business and your niche. So that way I can say, hey, this collaboration is perfect for you. Make sure you go apply. I've already started to do that for the mamas who've already joined the membership. Like I said, I'm getting to know you and your business and everything so I can best support you and make this as easy as possible for you. I don't want you stressing over not having a community to sell to. And so a big part of this membership is helping you to stay in front of people, stay at top of mind, get your name out there. So that way, as you're launching new offers or as you have openings in your one-on-one offers and different things like that, you already have an audience to sell to, an audience filled with your ideal clients, an audience who they're ready to work with you. They're just waiting for the opportunity, waiting to know when you have an opening for them or you have the specific offer that they need. So that is what we're doing inside of the Social Media Detox Club. If that sounds like, yes, I need that, head on over to mamaturnedmompreneur.com/membership to join us. The doors are closing on Sunday, June 16th. That will be your last time to join. And then I'm closing the doors temporarily so that way I can fully serve the mamas inside and make any changes that I need to make. And then when I reopen the doors again in probably about a couple of months, the price is going to be much higher. So if you're trying to get in now, if you know you need to be getting visible now and you're tired of trying to do it through social media, you need to come join us inside the club. All right, so let's get into the 5 mistakes that you need to avoid when submitting a podcast guest application. So the first thing is pitching with broad topics. I bring this up because sometimes people think broad is best. There's more that you can talk about when you're not specific. But the thing is that as a podcast host, if I see a broad topic, I instantly think, well, this conversation can go in a million directions. And I don't have like a specific thing to focus in on. You have to remember that when you're pitching yourself to speak on these podcasts, the host doesn't know you, most likely, unless you're pitching to be on a podcast where you know the host specifically, like you have a personal relationship with them. But 9 times out of 10, they don't know you. They don't know your area of expertise and different things like that. And so to make it an easy yes on the host, you want to give them a specific topic that you can speak on. You want to make it as clear as possible what value you're going to bring their audience. And you can do that through the topics you're pitching to speak on. So you want to make it clear. You want to make it specific, but also in your favor, if you are more specific, you're going to actually see a return from that interview, meaning that it's like one of the strategies we use inside of the social media detox club. We really look at what should you be speaking on that's going to funnel people into a specific offer. So that's why you want to be specific. Now, inside of the social media detox club, I do provide podcast pitch audits. Now, you get a podcast pitch template, but I also do audits. So if you are putting together your podcast pitch, or maybe you're working on an application for a podcast that you want to be on, I review it and I give you feedback on it, telling you what changes to make. So that way you can make it an easy yes for that podcast host, having everything you need. So that way they know that you are the person that needs to be on their podcast. The second mistake that I see people make is pitching to podcasts with the wrong audience. The thing is about guesting on podcasts, and when you're leveraging it as a visibility strategy, you can't say yes to every podcast. You shouldn't be pitching yourself to be on every podcast. You want to make sure that you are getting on a podcast that truly has your ideal listeners, people who actually are going to resonate with your message, people who actually need what you have to offer. So you want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence and not just pitching to every single podcast, but pitching to those podcasts that make sense for you, make sense for your business, make sense for your goals and everything. That is why inside of the Social Media Detox Club, I've created a visibility and collaboration directory. And within this directory, so not only am I, putting opportunities that you guys can apply for like collaborations, but I have a section that describes who the ideal collaborator is for this. So that way, whether or not that's ideal for you, whether or not this is an opportunity you should be pitching yourself for. And so you want to make sure that you have that clarity on that. Like you're really doing your homework, your research, your investigation, so to speak. You want to really get clear on who the podcast host audience is. And you can easily find that out, going and looking at their podcast description. A lot of times I'm starting to see too with podcast hosts, for those who have like a guest application, they have a breakdown of who their audience consists of. So you want to make sure that you are only pitching yourself to be on podcasts that have your ideal listeners. Okay, so the third mistake is not listening to the podcast before submitting your pitch. You can learn a lot about the podcast host, their audience, the interview style, all of that just by listening to a few episodes. And you want to do this because one, you want to make sure that the podcast host is someone that you're going to connect with. A big part of the success of a podcast interview is the banter and the conversation between the host and the guest. If it's not there, people aren't even going to listen to the interview. And so you may be sharing some amazing things, but because they are, bored, or the conversation isn't done in a way that's engaging, they're not even going to get to hear what you have to offer, how you can help. They're not going to learn what your expertise is. So make sure you take some time to listen. But also, this is a great way to alert the host that, like, hey, I did take the time to listen to your podcast, and listening to it, I resonate with your message. I resonate with your values. And so that's another great reason why for me to be a guest on your podcast, because I get it. I get you. I get your audience and everything. And so it shows that you care. Like, we like to know that you are actually invested in this, that you're not just pitching to pitch. Like, we know why you're pitching to be on our podcast, but just taking that time to actually listen to the podcast and listen to our message, getting to know us, that helps. That works in your favor as a potential guest. So you want to make sure that you take the time to do that. Okay, the fourth mistake is making the pitch about you instead of how you can serve. This is really important. I get podcast pitches weekly. Sometimes it feels like it's daily. And anytime I see a podcast pitch where it's literally the person's resume, all the things that they have accomplished, their expertise, and not once do they highlight how they actually can serve my audience. I mean, I've even gotten pitches where it's like, hey, I just wrote this new book. I want to tell your audience about it. Not, I have this amazing resource that covers X, Y, and Z. This is why your audience can benefit from it. So, like, you see the shift there, just the simple shift. But literally, most of the pitches I get, I feel like I'm reading a resume, like all their years of experience, all the things that they've accomplished, who they are. And sometimes they'll randomly throw in there, like, oh, yes, I'm a mom too. And it's like, okay, but I don't know what you can do for my audience. I don't know, like, even the signature topics, they're not relevant to my audience. So when you're crafting your pitch, you want to make sure that you're connecting it back to how it's going to benefit their audience. What is their audience going to gain from this? How can you serve their audience through your expertise? And this is why the podcast pitch template inside of the Social Media Detox Club, how I've structured it, it really supports with ensuring that you are writing your pitch in a way that highlights your expertise, but also demonstrating how you can serve the host audience. So like I said, you really want to make sure that you're not just making it about you, that you're not just essentially sending somebody your resume, but really looking at how can I come and serve this audience? Okay, then the last thing is not following up after you send a pitch. This is important. As podcast hosts, we get lots of pitches. Soon as somebody gets wind of the fact that somebody has a podcast, their inbox blows up with podcast pitches. And so there are times where your pitch can get lost. We know how also too, just technology in general can be messing up. So you want to make sure you are following up. And this is just important because also too, like maybe the podcast host, they looked at your email, they meant to respond, something else happened, they got distracted and they thought they responded, but they never did. So just making sure you follow up. And this is why inside of the Social Media Detox Club, there's a podcast pitch tracker, and I have it set up in a way that shows you when you should be following up and just keeping track of where your pitch is at, so to speak, in the process. So whether or not you've gotten a response and different things like that. Because sometimes podcast hosts will be like, oh, yes, you'll be a great fit, but I'm not recording interviews right now. Can you follow up in a couple of months or something like that? And so you want to make note of that so that way you remember to follow up and you can, get your opportunity to guest on that podcast. So the podcast pitch tracker inside of the Social Media Detox Club makes it so easy for you to keep track of all of that. But make sure you follow up. Just because you didn't get an initial response, just follow up again. And then, if it continues to go ignored, then you can say, okay, you know what, this is just not a good opportunity, or, count it as a no. But at least follow up 1 to 2 times just to make sure, in case your pitch got lost in, their inbox, because, people's inboxes, mine included, can be a dumpster fire. So just follow up. So those were the 5 mistakes you want to avoid when pitching yourself to guest on podcast. So just to kind of do a quick recap, the 5 mistakes you want to avoid are pitching with broad topics, pitching the podcast with the wrong audience, not listening to the podcast before submitting your pitch, making the pitch about you instead of how you can serve the podcast host audience, and then not following up. If you are looking to start seriously guesting on podcasts, say your goal is to guest on 10 podcasts by the end of 2024, you need to join us inside of the Social Media Detox Club. That is one of the things that we focus on is podcast guesting. And you will also have opportunities to collaborate with the other mamas inside of the club. Quite a few of us in there have a podcast. And so if you're a good fit, you already got a few podcasts that you could potentially guest on. So head on over to momaternmompreneur.com/membership to check out the membership. Again, the doors are closing this Sunday. You do not want to miss out. Things are already happening in the club. The mamas are already getting wins. Right now, we're working on market research to clarify our messaging. So the mamas are putting together their market research questions to start getting, those responses from the people in their community. One mama went through one of the trainings and literally mapped out 6 weeks worth of content just from one of the trainings inside of the membership. This membership supports you in so many ways. You're going to get the clarity you need in your messaging so that way you can start leveraging collaborations to attract your dream clients. So again, head on over to momaternmompreneur.com/membership to join us. It's also linked below in the episode description and in the show notes. All right, mama, I'll catch you in the next episode. Well, mama, that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to hang with me. If you enjoyed today's episode, will you do me a favor and follow the podcast and leave a review? Hitting that follow button and sharing your thoughts about the podcast are the best ways to ensure that other mamas like you find this show. Your review also lets me know if you're enjoying this podcast, so make sure to share your thoughts before you go. All right, mama, I'll catch you in the next episode.